Broadcasting across the nation, on your radio, and on current TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Michelle Bachmann says Obamacare is going to kill people. Literally kill men, women, and children. That's what she said on the House floor yesterday, proving she is certifiably insane. And to think, Republicans at one time, she was their number one candidate to be president. Can you believe it? Good morning, everybody. It's a Friday, March 22nd. And the best news we can bring you today is that the House of Representatives went home yesterday for 2 weeks. Of course, it's hard to tell the difference between when they're here or when they're home because they don't do anything either place. Good morning. Good to see you this morning on a Friday. Thank you for joining us on the Full Court Press as we bring you up to date on the news of the day here in our nation's capital, around the country, around the globe, and give you a chance to join our conversation, our little town hall of the morning. And you can do so on the phone at 866-55-PRESS. You can do it on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. It's just a lot of information to get out there all at one time.
We should make the phone number your name so that you don't forget it.
Yeah, we should, like 866-55-PRESS. Okay. Special treat this hour, backed by popular demand. In studio with us as a friend of Bill the entire hour from Bullfight Strategies, Eric Burns. Good morning,
There he
Eric.
is.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Peter.
Hey, Eric.
Thank you guys for having me in.
Thanks for
It's
coming
great to be
in.
back.
Great, you're part of the team. No
Absolutely.
doubt about it. The team being Peter Ogburn and Dan Henning and Phil Backert. Part of the team for one more day.
I was going to wear my Bill Press staff T-shirt today, but it was dirty. I wore it like the last 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
So
The team shirts. As I was mentioning, Phil Backert's sadly leaving us.
He is. Greener
Yeah.
pastures.
I know. He's going to work for Bill O'Reilly instead. I mean,
It's awful.
I knew he was.
Oh my God!
I knew he was a right winger. So
yeah.
that's what happens here.
He got so upset over all the Ravens trading their players away, he's just giving up on everything. You know?
He's just ready to do it live. He'll do it live.
And Cyprian Balding, of course, always here on the video cam, or it keeps us on the video cam. So, Eric, did you do your brackets?
I did not do my brackets.
Oh,
yeah.
What kind of American are
I know.
you?
Look, the last time I did brackets, I won, and so I just
Oh,
retired.
you just stopped. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
that was about
yesterday.
10 years ago, so I should probably get back there again. But
Well, we did yesterday. All of us did, and Peter is going to bring us up to date now
right.
because the first games were played yesterday officially as part of the tournament.
So really quickly,
how did we do?
Here's some data on ESPN, which is where we pull our brackets from. ESPN, 8.15 million brackets were entered. 8.15. This morning, after the first day of games,
8.15.
1,238 perfect brackets still exist.
Well,
And I am sad to say
what
that
percent-
none of them belong to members of the Bill Press Show.
What percentage is that?
Less than like 0.1.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah,
It's-
less than 0.1.
Yeah.
It sounds like it, right?
Yeah.
But
So here's
but I have to. So did we enter our brackets with ESPN?
no, we just printed them and did them here.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So that we were just doing this internally.
All right, okay.
So here's where we stand. There were a couple of upsets yesterday. What we did is we whoever, if you picked a game correctly yesterday, you get 1 point for it. So leading the pack, tied for first, is Bill Press.
oh, the big man.
Yes.
No wonder
again.
the show's named
He
after
picked
him.
Second
13
day in a
games
row.
correctly. The one that you or one of the ones that you missed, you picked New Mexico over Harvard, which is what a lot of people picked.
Yeah, I mean,
because
I
it
thought
was a number
when I
14.
saw Harvard,
a
I
number-
thought Harvard basketball.
Yeah,
a number
forget
four.
it.
They were number 14, and they beat the number 3 seed. You also had UNLV, and you also had Bucknell. The good thing for you is you didn't have many of these teams going too far. The ones that you missed,
Yeah.
you had UNLV and Bucknell going to 32. So I mean, you didn't get too screwed. Tied with you.
I picked Bucknell because I went there I visited the campus as a Boy Scout when I was a Boy Scout.
That is an astute pick. I mean, a
This is
true
how he
student,
makes
of
his
the, a
pick.
student of the game, right there.
Bill
Absolutely.
had
That's how I made my picks.
Yeah, exactly. Bill's picked Louisville to win it all because he really likes saying Louisville.
I like.
Louisville. It's great. Just rolls off the tongue.
I know. I love it.
So
Yeah.
tied
Little
with you
European
for
Louisville.
first,
Yes,
is Phil Backert at 13. Now, this is why this is a cautionary tale. I want to point out that this is why these numbers don't mean a whole lot, because Phil has 13. He picked 13 games correctly. However, he picked New Mexico to go to the Final Four.
Oh.
So while
he's already.
So I mean that's going to screw up his bracket.
So he's screwed
for basically every round from here on out. So don't look too much into these numbers.
Well, he's leaving anyhow, so who cares?
He's going to work for Bill O'Reilly. I mean, you know.
Tied for second is me and Dan. We both have 12. Dan picked a couple of upsets yesterday. He's the one person on the staff that picked Harvard over New Mexico.
I picked 3 major upsets yesterday.
But again, I mean, that's
just noting.
No, it's that
How
good
would
for
you
you.
ever pick Harvard? I mean, Harvard. You would think
they're not a big basketball school, but you know,
I mean, if this were like the debate tournament, I would pick Harvard. You know.
Yeah.
And then,
or the chess tournament, I would pick.
Impromptu pantomime.
Hanging down at the bottom in dead last.
I can't believe it. Is Cyprian?
Is Mr. Basketball, Cyprian Bulldog.
The Bill Press Show sports director.
He knows more about sports
Cyprian.
than anybody else. We bring him in to talk about sports.
I'm telling you, that is a curse with these brackets. I mean, you know, all my sports
The less
junkie
you know,
friends.
the better you do.
Exactly.
Here's the thing, though, about Cyprian's bracket. Like he only has 10, but he's not going to get burned too bad. He had New Mexico going to Elite 8, but other than that, he's not going to get too burned. So as this goes on, he's got a chance to redeem himself and pick up some games.
Okay.
Phil, on the other hand, Phil's screwed.
Cyprian says it's a marathon, not a sprint.
I mean, look, not to break this down to too much, but that is the truth with these brackets.
Right.
So
there we go.
We'll update
there we
you
go.
tomorrow
I
on
accept your congratulations. Yes. All right. So Eric's here with us as a friend of Bill. Chris Moody from Yahoo is going to be joining us a little bit later in this hour. And Congresswoman Lois Frankel from Florida joining us in the next hour here on the Friday edition of the Full Court Press. But first...
This is the Full
Quick check over the headlines.
stories.
Making news, continuing on the NCAA tournament. Like a true politician, Nancy Pelosi would not share her NCAA picks yesterday. She says she wants everyone to win. Yahoo reports while the minority leader...
come on.
You can't do that.
Well, and the world was just waiting with bated breath to hear what Nancy Pelosi's picks.
So she favors Georgetown since her husband and children went to school there, but she says she has allegiances to a lot of schools and is quote, rooting for everyone as part of March Madness. She calls herself March Mad, saying she's just very excited.
That's just like the ultimate politician answer.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I call that March sadness. It bums me out.
I'm surprised that Nancy would take. I mean, even the president get his pick. I mean, so what?
This is the one thing that
I
will
think-
bring people from both sides of the aisle together, and no one's going to hate you for it.
I think an angel just died.
That's how it works. You gotta pick.
President Obama is welcoming another couple of sports teams to the White House next week. He's doing 2 championship teams on the same day because they come from the same city. Last season's NHL Stanley Cup champion Los Angeles Kings and the Major League Soccer champions LA Galaxy will be in D.C. on Tuesday. Killed 2 birds with one stone.
Okay, go ahead, Eric.
No, I mean, look, I played soccer my whole life.
Yeah.
I'm just ready for soccer to have its own visit to the White House. You know, MLS, great. I mean, like, we've got an incredible soccer league in this country. They get their own day at the White House.
I'm
sorry.
actually going the other direction. I think that if you do 2 sports that nobody cares about, you can do them on the same day.
Second term prerogative.
Yeah.
Get your Powerball tickets. Tomorrow night's grand prize jackpot, it's swelled to $320 million. It may go higher. No one won the $260 million pot on Wednesday. It's the 3rd jackpot in a year to go over $250 million. It's becoming a regular occurrence now that tickets are more expensive, $2 a pop instead of $1.
All right, I just wrote myself a note.
There you go.
Yeah, you know, your chances go down astronomically when it gets that high.
Oh, Cyprian's got his tickets he's showing off. Wow.
There it is.
All you need is $1 and a dream, Bill.
No, I'm as dumb as Michelle Bachmann, but it's what I do is I never buy Powerball until it gets over 200 million,
Yeah.
and then I go out and buy it. And of course, I have less of a chance. I'd have a better chance if it were
It's open change, baby.
50 million than when it's 320. But
Keep hope alive.
That's right. I like it.
I'll be over there at the Eastern Market right after the show. Buy my $5. That's all I do, $5. So, yeah, big deal. All right, Eric, you have a great company there. You and Carl Frisch,
Thank you.
Plight Strategies. And I'm sure there are companies that come to you all the time saying, we need a little help with our public relations. We have a new campaign started. We want to rebuild. We want to retool. You know, how can you help us? So I've got a challenge for you today.
Okay.
let's say, I want you to put your thinking hat on. Let's say that Reince Priebus comes to you. He's the chairman of the GOP, and he says, our party is in bad shape right now, which it is, by the way. Right?
Yeah, that's like the understatement of the century.
All right. I mean, they lost seats in the Senate last time. They lost the White House. They lost 8 seats in the House. They have lost the popular vote in 5 out of 6 of the last presidential contests, because we know George Bush didn't win the popular vote. So we need to rebuild, okay? So my question to you is, what would you tell them? And can they possibly rebuild the Republican Party, and how?
Well, I don't know. See, as a Democratic strategist, I'm tempted to just tell them, no, you guys are doing great. But I mean, look, if I were giving them that advice.
That's why I know it's tough for you to.
Well, I can go back to my old Republican days, right?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all.
That's right, I forgot. You used to work for Rick Perry in Texas, so you're not so pure.
Lord.
And George Bush and a bunch of the other ones, too. All the bad guys from Texas.
Well,
But,
it was nice talking to you,
yeah.
buddy.
Hey, no, I've
You've
from the other
reformed.
cheek. But yeah, look, in all seriousness, this Republican Party has, it has no rudder. There are no real values attached to what we see from this party. I mean, and I'm sorry, lower taxes, no matter what, is not a value. The only time I'm seeing Republicans talk about values is when they're trying to justify why they're against gay marriage, or wiggle their way around it. But then you've got Michelle Bachmann getting up on the House floor and talking about, oh my God, we've got to save people from health care, and Paul Ryan wanting to, eliminate people's ability to see a doctor to balance a budget. I mean, there just is no rhyme or reason to what we're hearing them say, and it's of course you've got an issue with get on the same page, folks. Have 3 or 4 things that you're about, but they've got to be rude.
They have to be. I don't know what the Republican Party stands for. I know what they're against. Right?
Yes.
Anti-abortion, they're anti-same-sex marriage, they're anti-Medicare, they're anti-Social Security. I mean, they're anti-climate change. I mean, I know all of that stuff, but I don't know anything that they're for.
I don't know much that they're for either. I'll tell you what they should be for. They should be for innovation in government. They should be for, I'm thinking as a Republican, public-private partnerships that work, not privatizing everything, not, handing folks a voucher for, when they need to call 911. Don't call 911, just here's a crime voucher, which is kind of what they want to do with healthcare.
Right.
That's going to be effective. I mean, they need to if I were them, I would be focusing on innovation, on, at the local level, let's make the DMV work. Let's make it efficient. Let's bring those best practices of the private sector to the service aspect of government. Interestingly, it's Democrats that are talking about things like that. Gavin Newsom's been talking about that.
Barack
Obama talks about it. Nancy Pelosi talks about it. My old boss, Chris Bell, ran for mayor of Houston on that very platform.
So the way they're going to, from what you hear today, and this week, I must admit, and by the way, on our website at BillPressShow.com, and we've tweeted it out, I believe, my new column for
We have indeed.
For today, which is, the headline is, Can Anybody Save the Republican Party? And I mentioned in the column how much fun I had this week just watching the Republicans throw each other under the bus.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
I mean, in public, right?
Yeah, it's like fratricide.
Sarah Palin and Karl Rove sniping at each other, right? Rand Paul and Marco Rubio, sniping at each other. John McCain calling them wacko birds.
Wacko birds.
Yeah. He's just the angry old man, I mean, I feel like he's the guy at the end of Scooby-Doo. If it weren't for those darn kids. I mean, at every point.
Darn Rand Paul.
Yeah, I'm telling you. But I mean, look, the party, absolute civil war inside the Republican Party, I don't see a path out for them, very soon, very quickly, because it's not enough just to be to hate government. When you elect folks to government that hate government, they destroy it. And and it's not just government, society. You would never put, somebody as a CEO of a company who hated the company, who hated business.
The other thing, they came out with a report this week, which some people called the autopsy, which I love because, autopsies are performed on cold, dead bodies that are not coming back from the grave.
Yes.
And so they said, we need outreach. That we need to be the party that reaches out to show that we want to bring everybody in. And then the very next day, Reince Priebus says, we are the party that believes that marriage is one man and one woman only. When 81% of voters 18 to 29, 81% support marriage equality. So They're not the party of outreach. They're not the party reaching
Absolutely
out to
not.
young people.
No, I mean it's pure lip service. And look, I saw this in the Republican Party going back, when I was in the 90s, when I was a Republican, where there's a lot of lip service to diversity, reaching out to young folks. But when push comes to shove, the core base, just will not let it happen. They've got way too much power.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but we had this conversation a little over 4 years ago when Republicans got hammered when they ran John McCain as president on bad ideas. And they didn't learn anything in those 4 years. No, I mean, they ran a bad candidate
cut in here.
with bad ideas.
Yeah, I'm going to just cut in here and take a break. Right. And they didn't learn anything in 2012 either. Eric Burns and you coming back, 866-55-PRESS on the Full Court Press.
This is the Bill Press Show. Around the country and seen on current TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
26 minutes after the hour, Eric Burns from Bullfight Strategies in studio with us. Chris Moody from Yahoo News, Eric, will be joining us
all right
at the half. A story just crossed the wires. We're talking about the Republican Party, and there's really a civil war among Republicans going on in the nation's capital these days. And meanwhile, there's a lot of talk about how and if they can possibly rebuild. This is sort of related. Bloomberg is reporting this morning that back in the primaries in February 2012, when things didn't look so good for Mitt Romney, and he still had a lot of opposition from the crazies in the party, Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich, this hasn't been reported before, actually were engaged in very serious conversations about forming a unity ticket to knock Romney out.
Are you sure that's not an Onion story?
It sounds like it. It sounds like it, doesn't it?
Oh, man.
Well,
Romney, I mean Santorum and
Rick Santorum
and Newt Gingrich. Oh my God!
Wow.
Yeah,
it's like the Bull Moose Party of 2013. The second coming of Teddy Roosevelt. You got to be kidding me. What do you even say about that? Really, I mean, it's just. Can you imagine a more bizarre ticket of two individuals who are just stranger and out there? You've got Newt wanting to put bases on the moon.
Well, I can imagine Michelle Bachmann and Herman Cain.
That would have been the only thing weirder, but I mean...
Now, that would have been an interesting race, right? I mean...
But this question, I mean, we've heard it before. I don't know how many times we've heard the Republican Party say, we're now the Big Ten party. We're going to reach out. We want everybody in. And then they turn around right away, the day after, right?
Yeah.
And pull the same old.
No, hey, look, and every time they lose, they say, we're going to go back to the right. We've got to go back to the right. You hear the conservative scions say it constantly out of Washington, and they're wrong.
But you said it. No values, don't stand for anything, and are unwilling to change, which Absolutely. I think is a recipe for disaster.
This is the Bill Press Show. Chatting with you live at current.com/BillPress. This is the Bill Press Show, live on your radio and Current TV.
33 minutes after the hour now, here we go on the Full Court Press this Friday morning, March 22nd. We're coming to you live from our nation's capital. Our studio in Capitol Hill brought to you today by the Communication Workers of America, the good men and women of the Communication Workers Union under President Larry Cohen. They are the information union for the information age. You bet. Find out more about their good work at cwa-union.org. The House of Representatives yesterday They worked hard, and they put in a lot of sweat and tears and passed the Ryan budget, which was immediately shot down in the United States Senate by a vote of 79 to 20. So it didn't get very far, and we knew it wasn't going very far. Chris Moody covers all of this good stuff, political reporter for Yahoo News, joining us in studio this morning. Chris, it's always good to see you.
Always great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eric Burns is with us this entire hour as an FOB. We call him.
I love being an FOB.
A friend of Bill, right. So there was no debate in the House, really, was it? It was a right party line vote for the Ryan budget?
In the House, yeah.
In the House.
Well, there were a number of Republicans that voted against it, but not very many. It passed by just 220 votes. I mean, it passed with 220 votes, just 2 more than they needed. So it was pretty slim. It wasn't some kind of overwhelming, completely party line vote where every Republican got on board.
And those Republicans who were against it just thought it didn't cut enough? Is that right?
Well, there's a kind of a mix. You've got the ones that say it's not conservative enough, but you also have ones that look at 2012 and what happened to House Republicans that just got completely slammed in the election. And maybe they're in some vulnerable seats for 2014. They're being careful. They don't want those ads coming against them in the next 2 years.
I would imagine the Republican leadership, would be lining up those frontline, exposed members and only making them take the votes if they had to.
Yeah, they know. They wanted to make sure they got the 218 because it's a total embarrassment, of course, if they didn't. But once they get past that threshold, they give people the availability to drop off if they need to.
And as we've been talking, the Ryan budget would balance the budget, at least in theory, in 10 years, and it does so by repealing Obamacare. Michelle Bachmann pointed out yesterday on the floor why it's important to repeal Obamacare.
That's why we're here. Because we're saying, let's repeal this failure before it literally kills women, kills children, kills senior citizens. Let's not do that. Let's love people. Let's care about people. Let's repeal it now while we can.
I thought she was crazy during the presidential campaign. She's now totally certifiably insane. I mean, how many people has Obama? It's been in, 2 years now, right?
This is the anniversary, 2010, 3 years.
Yeah,
actually.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many people has it killed so far, right? I mean,
we have both sides saying this. During when they were going to pass it, people were saying that if we pass it,
death panels.
Death panels, but also people on the left said that if we don't pass it, people will die. So you get this kind of rhetoric on both sides.
This is pretty extreme.
If I could just point out,
literally, she said, literally,
people don't have health care; they will die. But there is no death panel. My question, Chris, is: does anybody really? How seriously is Michelle Bachmann taken in the House
anymore?
Well, think about how many votes that have passed that she has introduced. I believe it's still 0.
Is that right?
There's 2 types of folks in the House. There's the work horses and the show horses, and then there's also the crazy horses, actually. And you can determine where Michelle Bachmann fits in there. But she's one of the more show horsey kind of lawmakers in the chamber.
I guess what you have to say is Paul Ryan, even though I think his ideas are bad, is a workhorse.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely, by all means. He's working with leadership. He puts forth proposals that get passed in the House.
Right.
Maybe not in the Senate, though.
Yeah, they don't actually become law. They just get passed in the House. Look, I feel like a lot of this is really just kind of a Ryan vanity vehicle. This entire, rollout with the Ryan budget.
Well, 3 years in a row, it has worked to that extent. Got him on the ticket. Right.
It did.
So, with the Ryan budget now dead, the play, I guess, is in the Senate. Correct?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a misnomer, I think, to say it's dead because a budget resolution is non-binding. Even if it passed the Senate, that doesn't even mean that the government's going to set their rates based on the Ryan budget.
Yeah.
It's a blueprint for the party's future. One, it shows, it kind of gives you 2 visions. It's nice to have. This is where the Democrats would take the country. This is where the Republicans would take us. And then they can have that debate for the elections coming up.
Which they will.
Which they will, which is going to be great.
But in terms of keeping the government running, is the play now with the Senate budget?
No, absolutely not. It's with the continuing resolution, which passed yesterday, which will go through the fiscal year. And then right now, all sides are going to work with the Appropriations Committee, President Obama, House Republicans, Senate Democrats, to pass funding measures. But the budget resolutions really have very little bearing on this.
Right. And even if we get to a point where you had a House, I mean, theoretically, you had a House and Senate agree on a budget, that budget is still not, it's a non-binding.
That's right.
I mean, even if they pass and agree, it's not.
I mean, we do this, it's constitutionally mandated, but one would say it's a little outdated because we use the appropriations process now to fund the government.
The point I'm trying to get at is we have escaped again, briefly, temporarily, I should say, the fiscal cliff, right? Or
yes, we have.
The end of March going over the cliff.
But that has nothing to do with the budgets.
Okay. We've extended it until how long?
Till the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th, I believe.
Okay.
So we're going to have a debt ceiling fight in May, Bill.
That's right.
That's what I was.
Bingo.
And I was getting to that. So
Yeah.
but the next fiscal cliff is debt ceiling fight in May.
That's right. And the Republicans have said they still want, if you're going to raise the debt ceiling, they still want the same amount of cuts to go through. So there's going to be a battle over this. President Obama has made it very clear to House Republicans that he's not going to negotiate on debt ceiling, just pass it clean. But they're probably going to put up a fight.
So Democrats, of course, the last time, as you pointed out, made a lot of hay, a lot of political hay, by taking the Ryan budget and hanging it around Republicans' necks. Are they going to do? They're going to try to do the same thing this time.
Oh,
correct?
absolutely. I've been told that they are making it a central focus of the 2014 campaign. However, Republicans remember what happened last time, and they're trying to get out in front now. And one of the biggest differences of the Ryan budget from the past ones was that this one balances the budget in 10 years. Republicans have polled that. They're confident that the balanced budget message will resonate with American people. And so this morning, John Boehner's Super PAC released his first series of paid television ads in New York and Florida, hitting the Democrats there that voted against the Ryan budget and using the balanced budget message as their main key point.
Interesting that he would pick New York and Florida. Yeah, you broke that story this morning. I want to give Yahoo News and you particularly credit for breaking that story. And here is what one of those ads, and this is very clever. Everybody does this. They'll run the ad on cable television, probably a limited buy, but they get a lot of free publicity for it, like on the Full Court Press. Here's what that ad sounds like.
She wants that new bike so bad, and I can't figure out how to pay for it. It'll just have to wait.
Families make tough decisions to balance their budget. Why can't Washington? Congressman Joe Garcia just voted against balancing Washington's budget. Garcia backs policies to put America more in debt. It's reckless. It's wrong. We balance our budget. Why won't Joe Garcia balance his? Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
There you go, the Congressional Leadership Fund. Do families really balance their budget?
Well, it's hard to compare a family budget to the federal budget. Really, the federal budget can spend as much as it wants. And these are, again, political documents. They're just visions for the future. They're not actually literally budgets that restrain a certain amount of spending.
Well, we're cutting to a core question, and I think it's where you're going, Bill. And really, it's like, is there something inherently wrong with the government, having debt, having a deficit at a certain point? Economically, it's actually not. It can be good economics.
That's the central question I'm going to, which is somehow we have bought in ever since I can remember maybe the days of Ronald Reagan, that the number one goal of the federal government is to have a balanced budget, as if every family has a balanced budget. I'm in pretty good shape, right? I make a lot of money, but I owe a lot of money too, right? I got a mortgage on a home here. I got a mortgage on a home in California. I got a car payment I make. I mean, I could,
Well, I mean, sure. Deficits don't matter as much as debt. When debt is above 100% of GDP, that's when you've got a problem. And under current spending levels over the next 10 years, you're talking a decade of above 95% debt to GDP ratio.
But the deficit is also coming down.
Yeah, slowly but surely. But that's not the big problem. The economists will tell you that the debt is the worry, not necessarily right now the deficit.
But wouldn't they also say, Chris, that that's not necessarily the biggest problem we face? I mean, I think that's what gets lost, right? Is that, we're trying to stimulate ourselves as a country out of the most devastating.
But notice also John Boehner is talking
8% unemployment. Absolutely.
But John Boehner is talking about balancing the budget. He's not talking about getting rid of the national debt. He's talking about balancing the budget in 10 years.
You're right. Yeah.
What you just mentioned about jobs, it seems to me that there are a lot of more important problems. But one of them is we still have 8% unemployment, almost 8% unemployment.
One other interesting detail.
I would say that would be getting people back to work, priority number one. And maybe you can't balance a budget until you do.
One interesting detail about that ad, it's a mother sitting on the couch working on the budget. They're running those ads on cable TV shows targeted to women. And this goes back to when Democrats just crushed it with women in 2012. Really, especially single women, non-married, did very well. And I think Republicans are trying to double up here by working on that demographic and also pounding away at the balanced budget.
Well, if I could jump in, this is good politics for the Republicans. I will say that. This is the one thing I think that they're doing that's smart, because they're going to trap the Democrats into a bad debate. And it's just like we hear the dishonesty around the debt ceiling debate, where you will hear Republicans, we have heard them say, that expanding the debt ceiling or increasing the debt ceiling is like putting your groceries on a credit card. When the reality is, it's, if we go over the debt ceiling, it's the equivalent of not paying your bills.
Well, certainly, if they're going to stick to the Ryan budget for the third year in a row, they have to try to sell it better than they did the last couple of years.
And that's why they put the balanced budget thing in, because it gives them an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and that's why they're running these ads. Chris Moody's with us from Yahoo News. We're talking Ryan budget and more happening at the Capitol. Eric Burns here is a friend of Bill. Your call's welcome at 866-55-PRESS this Friday morning.
Heard around the country and seen on current TV. This is the Bill Press Show. Heard around the country and seen on current TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 12 minutes before the top of the hour. At the top of the next hour, we're going to talk about climate change and what one organization, the World Wildlife Fund, is actually doing about that. Right now, we're in the throes of what Congress is or is not doing. They were. Chris Moody is with us from Yahoo News. Eric Burns, Bullfight Strategies. Chris, they obviously were exhausted after they passed this budget yesterday, right? So they've announced the next 2 weeks are going to take off.
They've got Easter Passover to take a little break. The next vote is not till, I believe, April 9th. So really, until they have to get up there and cast another vote, we got almost 3 weeks.
Don't I remember that they just got back from a 2-week break?
They like to spend some time working back in their district. I don't blame them. I mean, if I could leave Washington and spend some time somewhere else every couple of weeks, I'd do it too.
Working.
The Washington is nice when they're gone. Right, I mean, it
is nice.
It's a fun town. Though I will say, having worked for a member of Congress, especially the House, those folks, they do work hard. I mean, I'm not saying they work as hard as the average person out there. They have a lot of perks and a lot of nice things. But when they go home back to the district, they're not sitting in front of the tube watching TV.
Well, it is hard to tell when they're here and when they're not here, because whether they're here or not here, from my perspective, they're not getting anything done anyhow. We've been talking about the budget. You know what? I don't hear anybody talking about anymore. And it's only 3 weeks old, the sequester. I mean, this was the numero uno topic, for like a month leading up to the sequester. And then that's sort of like it happened, and then everybody said, oh.
We've had like 3 crises since then, Bill. Like, that's so 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, get your crises in order. No, but I mean, President Obama did say that it would be a slow tumble. These cuts would come down not just like a hammer, but you'd start to realize them. I mean, if you're a daily reader of the Washington Post, they've basically daily got another story about different communities.
There's a front-page story in the Washington Post this morning about Indian reservations.
In Montana, I believe, yeah.
And the impact on the sequester. So the sequester, while we're ignoring it, I guess what point I'm making, it is happening out there.
Real.
And it's having some real cuts.
And it's going to have a negative economic effect. I mean, even just the discussion of it, it is, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 6 months from now, it is going to have a negative economic effect on the recovery.
I mean, we heard this week, it's Indiana, where they're having a lottery to decide which kids get yanked off of Head Start and which kids stay on Head Start.
I mean, that's no way to govern, let's be honest.
No, you put the names in a hat, and some of these poor kids, right, thrown out the door. Just based on it. It's
well, it kind of goes back.
Outrageous.
I mean, it just goes back to the problem we were talking about in the last segment. About what is the problem with this Republican Party, and this just is not what a ruling party can afford to do. I mean, they cannot burn down the house in order to save it. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Chris, so we now have a relief at least until end of September in terms of going off the fiscal cliff, as long as we can deal with the debt crisis. What about now these other issues that the president has said, and again, we were talking about until we got into this latest round about the budget, immigration reform, climate change, which we'll talk about here at the top of the next hour, gun safety measures. Are these moving forward? Is there still any hope that these are going to happen this year?
Well, Harry Reid put the gun restriction measure up on the floor yesterday. He took out the assault weapons ban, and that's going to be a separate amendment, which basically means everyone's going to get a say, but it's not going to be in the final bill. But it did have universal background checks in it. So that's certainly moving forward. And we know that the bipartisan group in the Senate is working, and a group in the House, working very hard to get an immigration bill. They have to do it before August. Can you imagine if they don't pass this bill by July, all these guys have to go back to their districts? We know what, in August, those town hall rallies are like. People screaming, the activist groups are going to get a part of it. They've got to do it before then, or else it's really stuck.
And so I have seen legislation, you're right, on gun safety, on immigration. There's a lot of on climate change. And
not so much. I don't think that's a big priority as far as something that's going to happen as assuredly as immigration or a gun safety bill.
I don't know. I think the immigration issue is a really fascinating one because we're starting to see Rush Limbaugh and the real kingmakers on the far right talk. That Lou Dobbs word, amnesty, that destroyed the immigration debate and dominated it in 2007. And Rand Paul's gotten caught up in this in this mess about amnesty and getting attacked from the great Rush Limbaugh.
There will definitely be some voices inside the Republican Party who will try to prevent the party from going in this direction. And they succeeded the last time. It was Republicans, a lot fueled by talk radio, that pulled the plug on George Bush's own bill. But I think those forces lose. My reading is those forces lose this time because the wiser heads in the Republican Party realize they need this.
Well,
Would you agree, Chris?
I think one of the most amazing things about this is that the leaders on the issue are the Tea Party senators. We're talking Marco Rubio sprang from the Tea Party over Charlie Crist in 2010. Same with Rand Paul. Two surprise victories a couple of years ago. The most conservative members of the Senate, and they're leading on the immigration issue. More so Rubio, of course, than Rand Paul. But to see Rand Paul come out so strongly the other day, this is not coming from the moderate center. This is coming from the right, and that's important to getting that debate out there and talk.
And whatever their motivations, if we get a good comprehensive immigration reform bill out of it, it'll be worth it. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And Eric, what a fun hour.
Hey, great. Thank you for having me.
Come back anytime.
Absolutely.
Bullfight Strategies, Eric Burns, and I'll be back and tell you what the president's been up to today on his big trip to the Middle East.
This is the Bill Press Show.